Now, maybe coming up to my most anticipated part of this program, which I'm going to call back Brett and Opher to the stage, as well as Chris Stitt and Colin O'Brien, and we're going to be doing a debate on some of these issues. Now, Chris Stitt, friend, 25-year veteran of diplomatic security, been stationed all around the world. Colin, till recently, Director of Security with U.S. Institute of Peace, also Head of Security with Millennium Challenge Corporation, had been with the Peace Corps, various other organizations, deep public sector experience. Now, before we get going on this, I just want to give just a prelude that this is going to be an argument on, or debate on, the Trump administration's policies and whether it's good for security, bad for security, et cetera. I asked them to take specific positions irrespective of what they believe personally. So don't get on their case if you disagree with them. I asked them to do this. They are incredibly supportive and good-natured people to take this on. I asked them to make pointed arguments that are directed to each other's points, not to, to dip around and say, oh yeah, we really agree on this, so let's be pals afterwards. No, I want them to disagree. And really it's to really address the issues brings understanding, it brings insight, it brings learning. So that's what I'm hoping for today. We have a lawyer and a policy expert in Opher and Brett, and we have real-life security practitioners, colleagues of yours, in Colin and Chris. So I've paired them up. It's going to be Opher and Chris arguing for the Trump administration's policies. It's good for security, and it's going to be Brett and Colin arguing against. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to pose questions to each side, and the other side gets to rebut. So it'll be 2 minutes, and then 2 minutes to rebut. And so we don't keep the third and fourth person out, they're going to get 30 seconds each to weigh in on the issue as well. That's going to be the first two questions. Then the third question, each of them are going to have 90 seconds to respond. So we're going to keep this tight. And I have a timer up here, and they're going to get a hook if they go over. So without further ado, let's get this going. Opher is going to start, and you can stand up, gesticulate wildly, do whatever you want. So Opher, are the current administration's policies good for national security? And 5 seconds, you can start. You're on.
Thanks very much, Mike. So I actually think that there's a lot of aspects with regard to the Trump administration which are arguably going to be core tenets with regard to what national security professionals would agree upon are going to be good for security. I think it's important to recognize when you think of national security, the preeminent idea would be the military itself. What we've seen most recently, including through the most recent legislative actions, is that Trump has been actively engaged in enhancing and increasing the military itself. Also, recruitment numbers are reportedly up. And as we've also seen is that Trump has been willing to engage in strategic ways to address what he believes to be core concerns for our national security. Most recently, for example, would be actually the bombing of the nuclear facilities in Iran, which were reportedly close to actually concerning days, if not weeks away from actually raising a lot of concerns. I also think that it's important to recognize with regard to the pacing challenges that we have as a country, there's still a dynamic focus that is actually going to be on China itself. There's going to be reportedly actually a engagement that's going to have directly between President Trump and President Xi with regard to what's going to happen in a variety of different contexts. He's leveraging the entirety of the trade that the United States does, that's the envy of the world, to try to get better numbers with regard to actually the trade imbalance, and also to address some of the security concerns through leveraging, as I discussed earlier, with regard to export controls, and also using the opportunity to not hold anything back with regard to those opportunities to bring alignment in key areas. And number one, he actually even put out with regard to an executive order specifically addressing like fentanyl.
10 seconds.
With regard to it. And also I would say with regard to just the overall security apparatus, we actually are seeing more and more with regard to the America and first type of objectives, enhanced investment protocols towards investing more to build more resilience, self-sufficiency, and to be less reliant on others around the world.
Just like a lawyer, give him 10 seconds, he takes a minute. Thank you. Brett, let's see, at the 25 mark, why don't you go for 2 minutes?
Okay.
Ready.
Opher, you couldn't be more wrong. No. I think it's important in the context of evaluating the impact of on national security of this administration thus far. And I want to go to what was a central part of my remarks, and Ian mentioned this again in the earlier piece, which was basically personnel, people. Not only just the human aspect of treating people appropriately, but the mere non-strategic manner in which this administration, from my vantage point, has gone about eviscerating many key parts of this government, in particular as it relates to what's important in this room on cybersecurity, whether you're talking about CISA within DHS, whether you're talking about cyber leadership at the National Security Agency, whether you're talking about just sowing uncertainty, discontent, and you're undermining, from my vantage point, the next generation of folks. People who are, they may not have been making much of the news. I was what's called a Presidential Management Fellow, which is a 2-year entry program, pretty fast track into the management of the federal government, no longer exists after decades. That's not strategic. That's simply just wantonly eliminating. And these impacts are not going to be necessarily ones that tomorrow you're going to necessarily feel and then hold accountable for this administration. This administration will be long gone, and you're going to have the repercussions being felt. And at that point, you're going to be wondering, well, what happened? And these are not things that you can flip a switch and reconstitute. Whether you're talking the elimination of aspects of the bureaucracy. Now, I will be among the first to say there was fat in the budget. There still is. There needs to be modifications. There needs to be ability to amend. But in order to do that, you need to have accountable individuals. You have no political accountability right now, and you just had a wanton, basically, initial, without any reference point, evisceration of and reduction in force of many aspects that are key to the federal government moving forward.
Thank you. Now, Chris, you get 30 seconds to weigh in on.
So again, my position that I was asked to take is that the benefits are good for national security. So I'll go with 2 things. Number one of the things that's going on right now is that all of this chaos and change, one of the things it's doing is it's keeping our adversaries off balance. That allows us to engage with the full force of all of the government programs, including economic programs that have not always been considered to be core to national security, to move our positions forward. Also, the increased emphasis on cybersecurity and the new executive orders on that are things that will, again, make America stronger.
Perfect, thank you. And Colin.
So, I mean, when you think about a lot of what was said and where I'll disagree with Opher is 2 points, really. Batteries and chocolate. When you look at what the Trump administration just did to renewable energies, it's going to kill America's battery infrastructure. Well, everything in national security now is batteries. Drones, AI, all of the new battlefield technology is batteries. So let's blow up the industry that's going to revolutionize America, ingenuity. The second one is chocolate. 60% of the world's chocolate comes from 2 countries, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. We have pulled out of critical areas of conflict like West Africa, and no one seems to care or understand how important that is to an American at home, and they're not going to until you can't afford a Hershey's bar, because we pulled out now instead of trying to stem the violence.
Now, I can't help but weigh in. Chocolate is one thing. If they take away my pizza, it's over. All right, great. That's that. So we're going to go to the second question, and we're going to start with Colin. Are the administration's policies favorable for corporate, institutional, and private security? Get 2 minutes now.
I mean, I think the short answer is going to be no. My 2025 bingo card, I don't know about the rest of you, but that was wrong about 48 hours into the administration. And there's really 3 key points that I think about when I say, why is this administration not helping us in private security? The first is instability. You know, you could talk about novel approaches and using tools to change the landscape. Well, the problem is when I'm doing 6 months of planning to help a corporation expand into a new market, and then a tweet at 2 o'clock in the morning destroys those plans. That's terrible for my job as a security professional, but also the companies that I'm working for. You know, we cannot build good security programs on moving foundations. We need some stability and predictability in the environment to be effective at what we do. The second one you really want to think about is the damage to America's reputation worldwide. This administration has poured gasoline on anti-American sentiment around the world. Look at the movements like Buy Canada, where Canada is very effectively boycotting every American company, from Kentucky bourbon to California wine. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle they're on. But you're also seeing a rise in threats against individuals and corporations around the world, particularly those that are aligned with the Trump administration. And that creates a very scary landscape for security professionals in a global world. And then when you look at the third one, it was brought up by Brett, it's the destruction of U.S. security infrastructure around the world. When you look at the thousands of security professionals that were positioned all over the world's high-risk and high-threat areas that are now gone, private corporations relied on the information that those organizations were able to get through their networks. Security cooperation, coordination, and intelligence sharing through groups like OSAC being one of them, but informally through groups like this. That information's gone. And there's this idea that the private sector will fix it. Well, guess what? The private sector relied on it.
10 seconds.
We can't fix it. And so when you look at that and why you're operating in a space of chaos, everything that is going on now is making my job as a professional harder because of the administration's actions.
Chris, you have 2 minutes to rebut.
So Colin, I sincerely appreciate your passion for this, your emotion for this, but let's take a cold, clear-eyed look from a business perspective, okay? You mentioned the fact that the government is pulling back on some of its public-private partnerships and its intelligence sharing, things like OSAC and DSAC. From a business perspective, that actually opens up more opportunities for the private sector intelligence firms to grow their market share in that area. Another couple of areas where we've got some business opportunities in the security realm. For instance, the One Big Beautiful Bill. It just gave $6 billion for surveillance technologies and physical security for the US-Mexico border. Again, areas in which security companies and security experts in risk, physical security, drone technology, surveillance, et cetera, have opportunities to broaden their market share and engage more deeply in these projects. The National Farm Security Action Plan elevates farm security in the hierarchy of critical infrastructure. And it again puts more opportunities for consulting companies, chief security officers, for other security personnel to create positions, gain market share in an area that other than some of your major corporations like a Cargill or something like that have often been overlooked. How are you going to secure farmland? Well, we've got some really incredibly smart people in this room who can put together some great ideas on that and again, gain market share and build
10 seconds.
Security companies. The last one that I have is the executive order on achieving efficiency for state and local preparedness. I come from an emergency management background as well. And one of the things that this does is it is going to force more collaboration at the state and local level. It will create a national risk register. It is trying to move things away from all hazards planning to more risk-based, risk-focused, and that again allows us to step forward and help the C-suites navigate that whole process and focus on what are the core critical risks that the company faces and how we can help them address them.
Thank you. Now, Brett, come to the aid of your colleague, Colin. 30 seconds.
Happy to. I think from my vantage point, so going back to uncertainty, I do think that there are two sides to the coin, but in the interest of my position, I think that I think it is very bad for business, because from the vantage point of you had plans come into 2025. Those plans were likely quickly modified, and you brought those plans back, whether you cut back on or increase, depending upon the position, lobbying, government relations, just different engagement with DC, or just basically said, the hell with it. Let that happen. We need to be looking at our own house and keeping it in order amidst this chaos. There are certainly opportunities in that chaos. I do think in the grand scheme of things, the overarching level of problems associated with that are quite significant. And I think when you speak of Build Back Better, beautiful, bodacious bill, the aspect of the aspect of particularly, you've set it up, everything is seen in the political spectrum, so you have 60 days for the agencies to be able to provide a spend plan for purposes of utilizing the money. That money needs to be spent within this administration. They've specifically stated that needs to be spent so that they can show the ability to the American public before the next election. How are you going to do so when you don't have contracting officers anymore? They've left. They've been fired. They've been riffed. So there's going to be unorthodox ways in which this money is going to be spent, and I think that is a harbinger for kind of the unorthodox nature, the way things move, and the uncertainty that's all just seen in a negative context from my vantage point.
Okay, Opher, can you rescue the argument?
Right, so I would think that we have to recognize that, understandably, there's been a lot of personnel changes, in particular with regard to the security apparatus and some of the key professionals that people were anticipating to carry on. But I think the idea would be is looking at the framing to actually the core functions of what those organizations were actually meant to be. Trump administration during the first time around was actually a proponent of CISA and actually did work with regard to building up that organization. And so the thought would be is that would continue, as I discussed in my speech as well, the idea of the core tenets with regard to focusing on the security threats from abroad and actually doing things that maybe companies can't do, such as the North Korean Vectors IT worker scheme that I actually mentioned earlier. There's actually a lot of concerted efforts still in those areas. And so the idea would be that, that focused attention may actually help provide the government the focus where it needs to actually deal with threats that private sector can't.
Excellent. The back and forth was so dizzying, I can't even summarize. We have 4 90-second comments to the responses to the following question. Is the best way to navigate the current administration to closely collaborate and align with the administration, or to maintain professional independence that may put you at odds with the administration? And just 4 90-second responses. We're going to start with Chris.
So I would start with this. Everybody in this room is a security professional. One of the things we do every single day is navigate risk and uncertainty and provide the best guidance possible to our C-suites about what we see from our perspective. Now, their perspective on risk is, of course, going to be a little bit different because they've got some other things to consider. But for us, I think the best possible way forward is to do what we've always done, which is work within the system to navigate risk, to achieve those things that our companies can achieve, to kind of work around the roadblocks and the obstacles that are put in front of us, and not necessarily fully embrace everything, but again, keep dancing like we always do.
Thank you. Brett, you don't really believe that, do you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. From my vantage point, I think that there's a degree to which companies need to come to grips with what is their culture, what is their mission, where do they want to position themselves marketplace, because you look at it, whether it be just the plethora of executive orders that are actually very directly vindictive, whether they're against individuals, law firms, you name it, he's done it. And so what you have are come to whatever moment for the entities themselves as to whether or not do they want to play ball or they do not. And the interesting thing is, particularly as it relates to an area where I'm familiar as it relates to law firms, is they've made decisions, and what that's led to is I think going to be interesting metrics related to whether or not there are companies that are removing themselves from those firms that have aligned themselves with the administration, and or lawyers that are going in or not based on that. And I think that's an important point to look at for purposes of understanding kind of where you play. I don't think nobody wants to be the center of the attention. Nobody wants to be the next tweet. So a lot of it is just basically people sitting back and letting things play out and trying to stay off the radar screen. But in doing so, are you really able to do the job that you need to do to be able to ensure that your company, the resiliency, what we spoke of, is actually front and center? So I think it's a delicate balance that's difficult to undertake, and I think for the most part, from my vantage point, it's trying to stay out of the fray as best as you can.
Right to the second. Well done.
You're welcome.
And okay, Opher, like you're not going to stand that.
I think one of the things we really need to focus on in terms of alignment, I would change that word to engagement, right? Because you are in business for a reason. You actually have products and services and values that you think are important to the world, and that you actually should relay those with regard to the administration so they can actually have a better understanding of what the impacts would be with regard to that. We would counsel companies, when you have the opportunity, to go in and help them understand, because you're dealing with administration, policy officials, decision makers that may not fully understand what the equities are involved in terms of what they may be impacting and how to actually get there. You have to, of course, stay true to your values, but I think one thing is certain, we've talked about a lot of the uncertainty that's actually created by the policy dynamics and the tweets and otherwise. I think that is because there is an ability to have a certain degree of flexibility in decision making. And if you can actually influence that decision-making through that engagement proactively, at least through that engagement, you'll be able to shape the narrative to a way that you think is better appropriate, or through that engagement, have a better understanding of what might be coming next. And so you would have a better understanding of what to react to, or at least actually be part of the conversation, which I would say is an important one to have, particularly in navigating uncertain waters.
Fantastic. All right, Colin, take us home.
And look, I got a little more than 90 seconds. I think for the challenge that, in a normal world, engagement's a good thing. It's the ability to advocate for your position. It's the ability to say, here's what we do, here's where we bring value. The challenge with this administration at a corporate level, not yet a security level, is that they don't want to listen to you. And this is a rogue bureaucrat and a mutineer talking to you at this point. But when you try to explain, this is why we matter, and they go, well, you passed your 30 seconds, I no longer care, goodbye. This is the group with which you deal with. And so there may be policymakers that do want to hear this, but good luck getting to them. And then you look at the number of firms that went, we are going to try to get along. Look what NVIDIA and Apple and Jeff Bezos did with Amazon and the Washington Post. They tried to get along, and that lasted a month until the tweets started or the tariffs started, and they got crushed. So it doesn't work. So what really matters as a security professional is maintaining your professional independence. It is understanding that we work in an apolitical field. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. What matters is I need to assess threat and provide recommendations independently. That it cannot be influenced by the political leanings of the administration or of Congress or of any other host nation that you're working in. Because that's how we gain credibility. And if we lose that credibility, all bets are off. And so the challenge right now is it's easy to try to align to get along, but that's called being penny smart and pound foolish.
All right, everyone get up before I'm going off script here.
Okay.
I'm going to declare a winner here.
boy.
Let me take your wrists. And the winner of the great debate is both of them. I'm no fool. What a great job they all did. This was really impressive. Thank you so much.